pre-tirement is that phase between full-time work and what we think of as traditional retirement, and it could be the key to you having a great retirement.
Are you ready to make the most of the only life you have? To make smart money choices focused on achieving what you care about most? Here to help you balance living well today without sacrificing your tomorrow is the retirement answer man, Roger Whitney.
Let's be honest, traditional retirement planning that focuses only on investing, it just doesn't work. It doesn't inspire a lot of confidence or clarity about what your future could be. I mean, it was built for your parents who had a simpler life, and it worked, but it doesn't work for you. If you are serious about creating a great life in retirement, you need a new, more modern approach, and that's what this show is about. Oh, thanks, Nicole. Wow, I just got word that my nerd membership, my nerd card, is about to expire. Well, we can't let that happen, so here's what I'm going to do and why I think it might be important to you. Next week, I'm going to fly out to Anaheim, California and attend Podcast Movement. It is the national conference for podcasters. I mean, you really can't get any nerdier than that. But this is why this might be cool for you, is a good buddy of mine, Saul-Sehy at Stacking Benjamins, is hosting a meetup at McFadden's in Anaheim on Tuesday, August 22nd at 6:30 p.m. His whole behind-the-scenes crew, Kathleen, Richie, and Shannon are going to be there. Plus, Ella Martinez, the podcaster with the podcast Couple Money Podcast, could I say podcast more, is also going to be there. And I'm going to be there. And I would love for you to join us. You can come nerd out with fellow podcasters and money geeks, and we can just have a cocktail or a sweet tea and spend some time together. So if you are in the Los Angeles area, next week, August 22nd, come join us at McFadden's at 6:30 p.m. I'll have details in this week's Six Shot Saturday. Now, let's get on with this show. So I'm guessing that if you listen to this podcast, you probably listen to a number of financial podcasts, or really podcasts in general. Here's the thing, none of us know anything about you. And I definitely don't. And I only serve people and give advice to people that I work for as a fiduciary. And unless you're a client, you're not one of them. So don't take this as advice. This is just helpful hints and education. And before you make any decisions based on this show, or really any show, consult your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor, because that's just common sense. Now, let's talk about this sad state of retirement readiness. So in the news today, Americans are still not confident or ready for retirement. That's not really new news. Every article I see about retirement readiness basically bemoans this fact that we're not saving enough, we're not investing enough, and it's just not going to work. And in some ways, that is true. Saving and investing for retirement is extremely important. It's part of being a good steward of your family's wealth, but it's not all of the story. And I think traditional retirement planning, which is the paradigm that all of these articles are based off of, from the fact that you have to build a nest egg to take care of you, which is important, but that can't be all of it because the numbers just don't work. If you're going to live a lot longer than any generation, which means you're going to have a lot more investment risk, a lot more inflation risk, and you're probably going to be a little healthier, so you'll be more active than any other generation in retirement. How could the numbers work if the solution was only to save and invest enough money? Now, I know people that are really in dire straits when it comes to retirement because for whatever reason, they don't have a lot of savings or investments to help provide for a great retirement. Or they have health issues, which really hamper their ability to improve the situation. Yeah, there's a lot of people like that. And there are a lot of people that are fairly well off, but not quite there when it comes to saving and investing. But the stress, in my experience, has always been the same. Whether you're worth $50,000, $500,000, $5 million, or $50 million, the stress never goes away about the future. Now, obviously, they are different problems, but I know plenty of people that are worth a substantial amount of money that have the same worries about maintaining lifestyle, keeping up with inflation, running out of money as the rest of us. So I think we need to get away from just focusing on the sad state of retirement readiness and feeling like, man, that just means I need to save and invest more, and that is the only lever I have to being okay. Because there are so many other levers that we can pull, and we're going to talk about one of them today. So in the most recent survey of you, my fellow listeners, what it is you're worried about, you're excited about when it comes to retirement, I asked the question, what excites you most about retirement? And in that survey, overwhelmingly, what excites you about retirement is freedom to do what you want. That was like 54% rated that as number one. The next on the list was traveling. And then right below that was doing nothing. I'm retired. And I think all of those answers are really informative about what we're really trying to accomplish in retirement. When most people approach retirement, they think of it like a light switch. They think of it, I'm either working, and generally that's in a full-time career where we're climbing the corporate ladder or playing the politics of whatever. We're really all in our profession and our craft. Or we're out. It's like a light switch. And that's generally how we plan for retirement. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have numerous clients that when they retire, it's like a light switch. They don't want to do anything else. But the majority of clients are usually somewhere in between. So one way to approach this retirement readiness issue that we're all facing is, rather than think of retirement as a light switch, maybe we think of it as a dimmer switch. So if by a vast majority, really, it comes down to having more freedom, time freedom in your life to pursue things that you value more than your career, if that's really what it is, that doesn't have to be binary. Either you're all work or you're all not. It could be this concept of pre-tirement, an in-between phase where you're dialing down the work in your career and you're dialing up having more time freedom to pursue things. It can help financially, and it can also help emotionally in making that transition successfully, even if you already have enough money to be able to do it. So let's get an example of that. Let me tell you the story of, we'll call him Joe. And Joe owns a plumbing firm. And when Joe and I started working together a number of years ago, like any business owner, he was hammering it. It was all-time work. He had a cruise he had to get out there that he had to manage. He had to go out to clients. He had to be on the sales team. He had to go on the service when issues came up. Joe was really working in his business. And if you are an entrepreneur, you understand, man, you're the driver of it. So we started talking about the future, and Joe was like, man, I love my business, but you know what? I can't keep this pace forever. This is something, at some point, I got to get out because this is going to kill me if I don't. So we started to map a plan of, okay, how do we get out? Well, one way of getting out is just saving and investing enough money to be able to support yourself on your assets. And that is a viable plan in some instances. But Joe still liked plumbing. He just hated the pace that he was at. So we started to have discussions and map plans about how does he extract himself from his business a little bit? How does he start to hire key players to fill the roles that he is doing so he can be free to focus maybe on more strategic things for the business or free to focus on having more time freedom in his life? And that is a process. It's not a simple document. It's a living process that you have to go through because it changes the mentality. If you're a business owner, and you may get this in that, man, usually you start with just you and work, and then you slowly build it from there. It's very difficult to get out of that mentality and we end up creating a job or a cage that we really can't get out of. That's why one great book is Built to Sell, which talks about building a business, not a job, and it's told in parable form. I'm using Joe as an example, but here's the thing. If you work for a corporation, you can apply a lot of the same principles if you're strategic about it. So what we did with Joe was we started to hire an ops manager, someone to manage sales, and it cost him more money on the front end, but it ended up building a more sustainable business to where ultimately he was able to take Fridays off. He was able to slow down his work pace and be the general in the strategy room, not the general in the tank driving around. And ultimately what happened with Joe was he was able to keep the business longer because he was able to slowly dial down his involvement, maybe even make a little less money in terms of income, but keep the business going longer to help provide for him. And he was gaining time freedom all along the way. And here's the cool thing for him anyway. If you're a business owner, ultimately your business is probably going to be more valuable in terms of selling in the event that you're not the one involved, because the buyers like that. And we had Randy Long on not long ago talking about that. But again, these principles can apply even if you're in a corporate environment. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. The point here is he started to realize that he could dial down his work. He didn't have to run so hard in his business if he was strategic about putting things in place to allow him to do that. And even if you're in the corporate environment, you can start to think strategically. How do you dial down that full-time career and position yourself to stay in the game, but do it at a slower pace? And there's a lot of value to that. And that's what we sort of call pre-tirement. I like that phrase. I heard someone say it, so I'm going to adopt it. That's the in-between phase, is how do you strategically position yourself to earn income, maybe less income, but gain time freedom? Because at least in the surveys I see, that's what people care about most. It's not retirement. They don't want to be their grandparents. At least most people don't. They just want more time freedom because they feel like they're running so hard. So how do we do this pre-tirement idea? Let's talk about some of the ways you can get there. Well, actually, first, let's talk about why it's important. Well, it's important because it takes pressure off of the saving and investing mentality. It can take some of the pressure off of just feeling like you have to sacrifice, and put money into things that you feel you have no control over, like the economy or the markets. Not that those aren't important, but if that's your only driver for success, yeah, it doesn't feel very empowering because of all the worries in the world. So it takes some pressure off of that, and it will allow you maybe to live a better life when you do reach full retirement. And at the beginning of retirement, and I think this is a really important point. So if you're 60 years old today, according to the research of Andrew Scott in the book, The 100-Year Life, he has a co-writer, and I can't recall her name at the moment, but Andrew was on the show, so he was one of my favorite interviews. But according to his research, and he's a professor at the London School of Economics, a 60-year-old today has a 50-50 chance of living past 90. So we're talking, if you retire at 60, then you have good odds of living past 90, which is a 30-year time frame of investing, inflation, spending, and everything else. So we talked to others on the show, Michael Kitces, about how at the beginning of retirement really is the hot zone of when you're at the most risk. Because if you have big market downturns early in retirement and you're drawing from your investment assets, even if you have substantial investment assets, it can really handicap the rest of your life financially just because of the way the math works on numbers. If you have it at the beginning of a series, then it just takes so long to catch up again. And then at the beginning of retirement, let's think about you. And I've talked about some of this before. Your skills are still relevant, right? You're still up to date on things because you're in the workforce. Your network is probably stronger than it will be in retirement. You have colleagues at other companies. You have colleagues at the companies that you work in, people that you know in your industry or areas that you work in. So you have contacts, and that there's actually a value to that network. That's actually something that's very underappreciated. Third, your longevity risk is greatest because you're the youngest in your retirement career. Market risk is greatest. I just touched on that. And on the soft side, transitioning into retirement is a period of significant change in so many different ways that we really underappreciate. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So this is why it's important to consider this pre-tirement phase at the beginning. Because in that first 10 years of retirement, typically your network's the freshest, your skills are the freshest, you still have some energy. The sun is shining is one way you could say it, and it's probably good to make hay while the sun shines. That's when you have the most flexibility. So what are some of the advantages of embracing pre-tirement, even if you may not actually need the money? We'll start from the financial end of it. So what are some of the advantages of embracing pre-tirement from the financial end of it, even if you may not need the money? Well, number one is it can help preserve your investments and your saving because you're giving them more time to work for you. So the idea is if you're earning some type of income, it's going to allow you not to have to draw from your resources to fill the gap of your spending. So let's use some basic assumptions. Let's assume you work, let's say for the first 8 years of retirement. So we retire at 60 and we work to 68, and you're able to earn $50,000 a year while still not running as hard and having some time freedom in your life. So that's 8 years of $50,000 that you're not going to have to touch in your portfolio. And we'll make an assumption of a 5% return rate. Over those 8 years, that $50,000 could equate to almost $500,000, $477,455. So by embracing pre-tirement and earning, say, $50,000 in this example, you could have roughly $500,000 more growth in the investment assets you have. Now, that may be something that's important for legacy goals. It may be something that's important for other goals that you have in terms of gifting or lifestyle. So there's a real financial benefit, not just in getting the income, but allowing your assets to potentially grow over time. So that's number one. So that could be, we'll call it $500,000 in this example. That's a $500,000 bonus to embracing pre-tirement. The next financial benefit is potentially delaying Social Security because you are earning some income. Well, so we'll stay with that $50,000 a year income that you earn in pre-tirement phase. Well, that may allow you to not have to file for Social Security. So if you're someone that is, say, 60 years old and had an income of about $100,000 a year, your full retirement benefit is going to be about $2,600 a month. So I'm rounding numbers here, just using some online calculators. If you were to take, let's say you retired at age 60 and then said, I need some income, so I'm going to take my Social Security early. Well, that $2,600 a month benefit at full retirement would be about $1,800 a month at age 62 because you're taking that reduced benefit, but you wanted the income because you retired at age 60 and you feel you've earned it, right? Well, if you embrace pre-tirement and work for the first 8 years in this example, at age 69, which would be the first year you started taking Social Security if you worked for 8 years in pre-tirement, your benefit would be roughly $3,000 a month. So you'd have an increase in your benefit from $1,800 a month to roughly $3,000 a month by embracing this pre-tirement concept. That's what, like a 60+% increase in the retirement benefit you're going to get from Social Security? Here's the thing. If you are a man, generally one of the biggest worries you have is, if I pass, what about my spouse? Well, if you are able to do this and you lock in that much higher retirement Social Security benefit, then that is the benefit that your surviving spouse would have. Now, that works either way. It doesn't matter whether it's a husband or wife or who is the big income earner. But now you've locked in a much higher Social Security benefit for the surviving spouse for the rest of their lives, which is a benefit beyond the financial end of it. It's an emotional benefit of feeling proud that you've been able to help provide for them. But there's a big financial benefit that you get in addition to allowing your assets to accumulate and hopefully grow, is increasing your Social Security benefit. The third financial benefit of embracing pre-retirement is the reduction, potentially, in healthcare costs. So according to eHealth Insurance, someone in the 55 to 64 age category in 2017, if they were buying private insurance, they were paying on average $700 a month for their health insurance. So if you're going to retire at, say, age 60, and you don't qualify for Medicare until age 65, you got a 5-year gap where you're going to have to buy private insurance or access somebody's insurance, right? Well, if you embrace pre-retirement and say you work part-time at a company, you may be able to, one, obviously pay for those premiums, that $701 a month that you're going to have to pay for, rather than taking it from assets. So we could do the net present value or the growth of that. But if you work for a company that offers employee benefits, healthcare benefits for part-time workers, that could substantially reduce that amount. So that, there are a lot of companies now that are embracing paying healthcare benefits or offering it on a group policy to part-time workers. You got Starbucks, UPS, Staples, REI, Lowe's, Costco, and the list can go on. So even if you don't need to work, embracing pre-retirement could have some major financial impact on your finances for your family. And if you do need the money, it could be even more powerful. So that's the third thing, is that you can help defray your healthcare costs before you qualify for Medicare. The last big financial benefit that I want to mention, and I don't have any stats on this, but I can tell you from just personal experience in walking life with clients, is the post-retirement spending inflation rate. So if you are a hard charger worker and you retire, most likely you're thinking, man, this is my chance to live and go do the things that I want to do. I finally have that time freedom. And you have all the time freedom. One thing I've seen happen is big spending jumps in the first 3 or 4 years of retirement for travel, for RVs, for dining out, for activities, for numerous things, because you finally have the time to go do things and you go do them. And if you have the financial wherewithal, you feel, hey, I've earned this. I'm going to go spend the money. And then usually that tapers off after 3 or 4 years. But that post-retirement spending honeymoon is real dollars. And it's like, because it's an on and off switch, you go from full-time work, having no time for anything, to all the time in the world. And if you embrace pre-retirement, it can help moderate that, because you're dimming it down and you're not so gung-ho to just go all in on the spending. So if we add up roughly $500,000 in allowing your assets to work with the assumptions I made, a 60% increase in your Social Security because you don't need to touch it, avoiding having to pay only private insurance for healthcare before Medicare, and the retirement honeymoon lifestyle creep, we're talking a substantial amount of money financially that you could benefit. It could easily be $750,000 with some of the assumptions, if not more, by embracing pre-retirement and not thinking of it like a light switch. So that's the financial end of it. That's why it can be so powerful. Now, I'm talking about people that have some assets, but if you don't, it can be even more powerful in being a solution to help you make ends meet and live a better life. Now, let's talk a little bit about the qualitative advantages of pre-retirement. In financial planning, we think it's all about the money. We're money people, right? We have a 12BC calculator embedded in our head. We're all about the numbers and graphs and charts and everything else. But let's talk about the qualitative benefits of pre-retirement and some of the qualitative things that I've seen in my practice with clients that are retiring. So when you're working, you have a fairly robust social network, even if you feel like you don't, right? You have the guy in the cubicle or the gal in the cubicle next to you. You have your coworkers, you have your assistant, you have your boss, you have people that you may go out to lunch with. Maybe you do some of your things socially with these people too, because of business travel or personal, families getting together. You have a fairly robust social network where people are coming in and out of your life constantly that engage you in conversation and some intellectual curiosity. Well, if retirement's a light switch and you turn that switch off, a lot of that goes away instantly. Those coworkers that said, "Oh, it's going to be great, Joe, and you're going to have a great time and we'll get together for lunch," suddenly they may be too busy because they're still in the game and you're not. And if you don't have a social network that's fairly robust on the personal side of things, either through groups you're a member of, hobbies, or church, you can find yourself very lonely very quickly because you don't have that natural flow of people coming in and out of your life. It makes me think of the transition from college to career, because in college, it's even more so, right? University, there's a constant flow of people, and then it actually gets smaller when you go to work. So from a social aspect, I've noticed clients that they start to miss that social network and their world starts to close a little bit. Well, if you don't think of retirement as a light switch and you embrace pre-tirement, it can allow you to build social networks that are outside of your main career. As an example, let's say that you worked at a huge company and you decided to leave that company, take retirement there, and just go work part-time, let's just say at Lowe's. Well, now you're making, if you're working part-time at Lowe's, you're making friends in your community, assuming you work at one close to your house, people that are interested in what you're interested in, home improvement or handyman or handy gal stuff. And you're starting to build friends that are closer to you, interested in the same things that you're doing, and outside of normal work. So it could be a good stair step to help you build those connections or maintain connections outside of your work environment. So that's number one. Number two is a sense of purpose. Now that may seem silly to some, but if you think of your life, ever since grade school, you've been striving to go do something, right? You've been striving to get to the next grade in school. Me, God, I hope I pass that test. Then you go to college and you're the same thing. You're striving. Then you get a career and you're working for raises and for good reviews and building the business. Well, when you retire, what are you actually working for? Now, I get that you may not want to do anything. I have clients, they don't want to do anything. They're cool with being out of that rat race. But even subconsciously, I think we're all driven to have some purpose of some type. And you can have purpose outside of work. I'm not saying work has to be it. My mother-in-law is a good example. She was a hard-charging business lady. And then when she retired, her purpose became her church and bell choir. She was, I don't know if they had professional bell. I mean, I went to big conferences where they would compete and play bells, and it's beautiful music, but that was her purpose for a very long period of time. And now that's evolving, but that gave her something. So you're going to have to replace purpose with something. I've also seen purpose manifest itself in shopping. And I'm not just saying ladies shopping for clothes. I know people that they shop for guns all the time, and there's never enough, which introduces a whole nother financial issue. But you get my point. Then last qualitative consideration is the mental and physical. When you have a reason to get up in the morning to go do something where you're reasonably mentally engaged, let's take the person working at Lowe's. They're mentally engaged. Hey, I'm looking for this, and how do I fix that? You're helping them problem solve. Physical. We'll take the person at Lowe's. You get to walk around and maybe lift some things and show people some things. That mental and physical aspect can really be enhanced by pre-tirement. Whereas if you're not doing anything, it's very easy to start to let that slide. Now, this can be accomplished in a lot of different ways, but I think these are some of the qualitative and financial benefits of it. So the next question is, okay, Roger, I get it. It might be a good idea to consider. How do I go about making this so? Well, last week we shared one of my favorite episodes of the year so far. I don't know if it's yours or not, the challenging questions. And we talked about growth cycles. I think the way you start to position yourself to consider this or make it so is to start a growth cycle or a smart sprint focused in this area to explore it, not to figure it out, but to explore it. Because there are many ways that you can get this taken care of, but here are some tips. Number one, start planning earlier than later. Don't wait until the day you retire to figure out what pre-tirement might be for you. The more you can start noodling on it right now, the more ideas will come and the more it will get refined. And you can look at it from within your company, because there are a lot of companies that are embracing flex time, part-time, special projects, and remote work. And I've helped clients think through that and position themselves to secure some of that. That's a good known entity. But don't limit yourself to within the same company or even the industry. Think outside of the company or industry that you're in. One is because you may be really good at what you do, but it's not like your life's calling. Maybe you've grown into a position of power or of competence, but it's not like something that you felt born to do. You're just really good at it. This might be the time to explore what you love. A great example is the handyman or the handy gal who loves working outside and fixing things, but they're in management in some way in some big corporation. Now may be the time to explore what is part of your spirit in that handyman or handy gal way and go work at Lowe's or go figure out how to be a Mr. or Mrs. Fix-It of some sort. Don't stay within the industry necessarily. Then you want to build your networks. That's tip number 2 is you want to, or 3, I don't remember. You want to build your networks. Your network either within your company, if you're going to focus on trying to build flex time, part-time, start to talk to heads of other departments, as well as yours, and explore whether it's possible and whether people are already doing it, and start to nurture those contacts to help you figure out how to do it for yourself. Or if you think you want to have pre-tirement outside of work, start to build a network in an area that you want to consider. If you want to work at Lowe's, start hanging out at Lowe's a little bit and getting to know people, because that will help you get a job later on. The next tip is possibly hire a coach to help you figure out what your skill set is. I'm amazed at how many of us are so ingrained in what we do, we forget what ninja skills we have. We just do it so naturally. And there are great coaches out there. We've had Mark Miller from Career Pivot on here. That's what he does, is help people figure out what their ninja skills are so they can figure out where they can apply it. So that could be a possibility. And then the last tip is be open to opportunities. Trade your fast track career for a more fun track career, even if it's work that might be a little bit below your skill level and below the money that you are used to earning, because that's not what we're trying to accomplish here. Think about freelance work, consulting work, virtual work. There are a lot more opportunities than there ever been before to connect with people and help them regardless of where they're located. So be open to opportunities. So I'm going to give you now, to finish this up, a list of examples of pre-tirement work that people I know or clients that I work with have worked to position themselves and that they're doing now. We have flex time work at the same company, short-term assignments with the same company, golf course work to pay for the golf basically, teaching, consulting, virtual assistants, working on boards, board work, working at Home Depot, working at Starbucks, working at a gun range, event planner, event manager, Mr. or Mrs. Fix-It. I know people that are doing all these types of things now, and it didn't just happen. They either fell into it or we worked through growth cycles to position themselves for it. The world is your oyster in terms of what you can do. The world is your oyster. That's funny. I forgot that quote. It's only limited by your creativity. So this is something that you just have to continue to noodle on. I would love to hear your pre-tirement stories or what you think you might be interested in doing. So go to rogerwhitney.com and click on Ask a Question and share those with me. And maybe we can crowdsource some ideas so we can embrace this pre-tirement concept.
On your marks, get set.
Hey, welcome to the Smart Sprint segment where we set a little 7-day sprint to take a little baby step to creating a great life. I sort of shared it just a second ago. Why not in the next 7 days, think about what you might do in a pre-tirement phase? Not that you have to commit to it, but what might you do? And I would love if you shared it with me so I can share the ideas together, and maybe we do a whole nother show on this and just talk about what ideas we come up with. So in the next 7 days, think about what might you want to do in pre-tirement, not that you're committing to it, and share it with me at rogerwhitney.com, and then we'll talk about that. So get going. Hey, welcome to the Happy Lab, where we noodle on how to live a little bit happier life. So a couple weeks ago, I talked about the idea of having one conversation at a big dinner party. Rather than having all these little side conversations, having one conversation where you pose a question and you go around the room, and it's a great way to get to know each other and have more unity at a dinner, which I had the opportunity to do a week or so ago when I was in Boston. We went to Abe and Louie's, which is this amazing steakhouse, and there was probably 7 or 8 of us, and we sat there and we posed a question, and the question was, what was a book that had a major impact on your life? And we excluded the Bible. All of us were Christians there because we sort of accept that one. We started going around the room, and as we were going around the room, and it was a great discussion, a server came to my left, on my left side, and was filling my water. And as she pulled her hand back, she knocked over this huge glass of wine, because that's the only kind of wine I drink, huge glasses anyway. And it dumped all over me. So it covered my sleeve, my dress shirt, almost beyond the elbow, and half of the left side of my shirt. I was drenched in red wine. And she felt so bad about it. And the waitress, the one that was responsible for the table, you could just see the look on her face. And she was like, oh my goodness, what happened? And this is a pretty high-end restaurant. So the manager came over. They were offering me club soda. I'm like, dude, this shirt is done. I mean, it was soaked. And then the manager came over, took my name, and they were very good about it. So I had an opportunity there, right? I could get furious because this was I don't have very many of these, but this was a bespoke shirt, which is a custom shirt, because I've been in the process of upgrading my wardrobe now that I'm 50. So it wasn't cheap. And I had wine over me, soaked, and we were going to do something after we went to dinner. I could have been really upset. And previous versions of me probably would have been really upset. But I had a choice. We were having a great discussion, having a great dinner, and I chose just to say, c'est la vie. Such is life. And I'm very proud of myself, actually. Just kept a stride, thanked the staff for their attention, didn't hold any grudges, and just continued the dinner. I did get another big glass of wine, though. But the point is, if we're going to be happy in life, it's easy to let something happen to us and just focus on it and just get pissed about it. And many of us have done that in the past. But we have a choice to make of how we respond to everything. And I'm proud as to how I responded to that, because it didn't interrupt the dinner at all, and we were able to have an amazing conversation. Now, as a postscript to that, I want to give kudos to Abe and Louie's Steakhouse. They have one in Boston, I think down in Florida. Literally 3 days after I got home, I got an email going through the process of replacing my shirt. So they were very proactive about that, so I'm thankful for that. So you want to be happy? Focus on how you respond to things. So if the financial plan that you have put together with your advisor isn't instilling the confidence and clarity you want to have about your retirement, and you feel like you're missing something, that you're totally dependent on the markets, go to 5minuteretirementmakeover.com and learn how a more agile approach to retirement can help give you that clarity and confidence that you can create the retirement you want. Just check out 5minuteretirementmakeover.com.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.